a Noble Media Group member.
The world is very different now, for man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life.
6,000 years ago, man invented the wheel. 5,000 years later, he invented the printing press. 460 years later, he would fly. 70 years later, he would step on the moon. And 8 years later, he would send a spacecraft beyond our solar system. Today, we have computers which can think for themselves and robots that can dance. Properly utilized, today's technologies can bring an end to poverty, hunger, and even the need to work, or to make bombs that will end all life on Earth. Will we destroy ourselves or come together?
It is now 85 seconds to midnight. This is the closest the world has ever been to midnight.
Join Joe Carvin as he explores these questions, because mankind is on the hinge of history.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Hinge of History. It's Brian Mistro. I'm here with my good friend Joe Carvin, and we've got some fun stuff to talk about today. It's interesting. Before we get going, I just saw something, Joe, and I didn't even discuss it with you. So I'm gonna kind of throw you under the bus a little bit here. But I'm sitting here and I'm watching our intro as it's going by, and where we've got the robots dancing there. You remember that? Yeah.
Oh.
It's obsolete. It's obsolete. They don't even look like that. I saw on it was another Chinese deal, and they've got the robots dancing. Man, they're moving like people, and the ones that we've got that are in our intro, we're gonna have to change that. We're getting behind the times.
Well, I'll tell you what, Brian, we're going to have to change everything probably every couple of weeks. I mean, that's a great segue. We didn't prep this into today's show because basically my goal today is to first give you a visual understanding of what exponentials are, and then talk about how exponential change, Moore's law, is transforming our world on back of last week's show, and if you're Monday's show, where we explained that $7.6 trillion investment from Goldman Sachs
Mm-hmm.
to increase AI compute and AI factories, followed by a force multiplier, which is quantum computing, and AGI, artificial general intelligence, very likely by 2030. How is that going to transform our world in 2030, 2035? This is increasingly becoming a reality, and we're going to talk some more about that. I really want to see a physical view of that, and 100% right, these robots are going to be out of, obviously, before you know it. But what I'd like you to do is let's start with that video from Peter Diamandis, which is 10 years old, where he gives you a visual depiction of the first hard drive and how hard drive capacity and memory is increased over the years. So let's start with there, Brian, and then we'll pick up the conversation.
Well, let's do it because I have actually watched this one, and it is something else. So get ready to be blown away.
So this is the first hard drive. It's 5 megabytes, $120,000. And if you happen to have your cargo airplane, you can move it from office to office, right? Now, fast forward to 2005, and this is 128 megabytes of data for $99. Pretty amazing, right, comparing those two. But here's the question. Did any of us actually notice when 9 years later, you got 128 gigabytes for $99? 1,000-fold increase, right? That's extraordinary, 30 million-fold increase. And here's the point, it doesn't stop here. This rate of growth continues. We're using faster computers to build faster computers to build faster computers. And so this is what it looks like. This is the last 110 years of computational growth. We've been living in this exponential, and by the way, this is plotted on a log scale, right? And an exponential plotted on a log scale looks like a straight line. This is, high school math. Okay. But it's curving upwards. It tells us that the rate at which computers are getting faster is itself getting faster. And it's likely to continue. And if it does, what we see in the computational growth is that, back in 2010, 6 years ago, $1,000 at Best Buy could buy you 100 billion calculations per second. More computational power than the United States government and military had back in the 60s getting us to the moon, right? 6, 7 years from now in 2023, now $1,000 down at Best Buy, if they still exist, buys you the computational power of a human brain, 10 to the 16th cycles per second. 25 years later, $1,000 now buys you the computational power of the entire human race. Now your students' homework gets really easy. So this is the power of computation. And these faster, cheaper computers are powering a whole slew of technologies. And all these technologies are driving convergent, unexpected consequences. And these technologies are going to reinvent how we teach every child on the planet. Not in 20 years or 10 years, the next 5 years.
So I'm guessing that you weren't flying around in your Pan Am airplane with your hard drive a couple of years ago or anything, were you, Joe?
No, I wasn't. My wife
Incredible.
was a Pan Am flight attendant. We met on a Pan Am flight, but no, I haven't been flying around my hard drive.
Incredible. I mean, it's to think how much things have changed. And I want to emphasize your point earlier. That video, everybody that's watching, that video is 10 years old.
Right.
Look at where we're at today. Oh my goodness.
Actually, and so that video goes. So again, I love it because it really depicts the miniaturization of technology. And then we go from $120,000 from 5 megabytes to 2005, where you could buy 1 megabyte for $99. Fast forward to 2014, 1 gigabyte for $9. But I'm sure the audience at home is asking, okay, what's happened since then?
Yeah.
So that change from 1956 to 2014 represented a 31 million fold increase. From there until 2024, it increased 12 times, which makes it a full-on increase of 381 million times between 1956 and 2024.
Insane.
So it's extraordinary.
Insane.
And this is what will impact our society. Now, one interesting thing for future conversations, the price of memories come up in the last 2 years because of all the increase in fight for compute capacity. So that number's come down a little bit in the last 2 years. But basically, right through to 2024, 381 million times. Now it's only 91 million times. But at the end of the day, it gives you a sense of the trajectory. What I want to give you a sense of the sweep of technological change. In our thesis, right, this is a continuum for 250 years of the scientific industrial revolution. Since 1900, 125 years of accelerating technological advancement. And we now are either going to be overwhelmed or we're going to learn how to surf this technology tsunami and turn it to our advantage. And this is another way to physically see Moore's Law. Now, we've talked about Moore's Law. That was Gordon Moore in 1965, the co-founder of Intel, said compute capacity would double every 2 years. And it has since 1965, more or less. And ultimately, compute capacity double every 2 years at the same price.
Mm-hmm.
The CEO of Intel in 2015 said that if the real physical world, if a Volkswagen Beetle car had been transformed in the same way, I want to get these numbers exactly right, it would go 300,000 miles an hour. It would get 2 million miles to the gallon. It costs how much? 4 cents.
Yeah. By the way, we don't even make the penny anymore, but yes.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, that gives us an insight to this potential for superabundance. Superabundance if we can bring that compute capacity to bear. Now, if you calculate a doubling every 2 years, right? That will be basically translated into, so once every 2 years, a doubling, that's a 32-fold increase over 10 years. But what's happening today? With all this investment in compute capacity, basically it's increasing doubling every 6 months. So when you accelerate the growth in compute capacity to every 6 months, if you were to extrapolate that over a year, that would be a millionfold increase. A millionfold increase in AI compute. Now, I guess the good news is that the physics we talked last couple of times about the 5-layer cake.
Yeah.
In order to turn energy into tokens, you need all 5 layers. So there's going to be constraints on the energy front, right? On the chip front, down through so a millionfold increase isn't going to happen. So I went to my favorite AI, Claude AI. I said, okay, given the constraints, and he gave me a pretty wide range, somewhere between 300. So every month, okay, that doubles every 9 months or every 14 months. If it doubles every 9 months, we'll have a 10,300-fold increase in AI compute. And if it doubles every 14 months, it's a 380-fold increase in AI compute. So I said, all right, well, let's be conservative. Let's take a look at let's take a look at a 500-fold increase in AI compute. And ultimately, the question I asked my AI is, okay, what's going to be the impact? And ultimately, this is sort of what we talked about last time. So you're going to have a dramatic drop in the cost of intelligence, right? Dramatic cost and the cost of intelligence. And ultimately, that's going to begin to impact jobs, correct?
It will.
And so, I mean, and so what do you think about that idea that we're going to have a dramatic increase in the cost of intelligence? And this is the big challenge, right? Because ultimately, AI is a tool, right? But we've never created an intelligent tool before.
That's right.
And so at the end of the day, the big question I have is, what do you see? What's going to be the impact, Brian, of an increase in intelligence?
Just the intelligence.
Yeah.
I think it'll make folks a lot more productive. I think you'll see productivity in businesses, individuals, even in the educational system go up substantially. And there's a big caveat I'm going to put at the end of that. But I think that's realistic with what we're going to see coming. The caveat I'll put at it will be is, and you and I talked about this on the last show, and I think we've talked about it on every show, but I'm just going to say it again for our viewers. Our country and this planet is not ready for it. We are not tackling this on a political level that we need to be doing this because yes, we'll become a lot more productive, but that also comes with some things that we're going to have to deal with as a society.
The societal challenge is ginormous. And in future episodes, we're going to talk about, we want to lay the groundwork. Hopefully, we've done that now for the pace of change. And we'll talk a little bit about the challenges going forward with our next video. But basically, what's the potential? What's the likely impact? So one, we have a dramatic cost drop we're going to have scientific acceleration.
Yeah.
I mean, all kinds of breakthroughs, right? At the end of the day, Bill Gates, we've talked about as his book, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. We're going to need technological breakthroughs. So if we apply the amplified human intelligence to these challenges, we'll have scientific acceleration. We're also looking, and this is the big thing, agentic labor. I said it once, I said 1,000 times, McKinsey CEO, we're going to have to get him on the phone. I get him on the show. McKinsey CEO, 60,000 employees, 25,000 agents.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're going to have concentration of agentic labor automation. I mean, Brian, we're going to have, I don't know if the agents can replace you and me.
Oh, I'm sure they can't.
I'm sure. Well, I don't know, but certainly it can facilitate and help us. And then ultimately, compute becomes a strategic geopolitical asset. So this is the way my friend at Claude summarized the whole thing. He says, look, my honest single sentence best guess, this is a guess, obviously, the most likely near-term certain impact, right? is that today's frontier capability becomes radically cheaper and more embedded everywhere. Science and engineering and compute-bound fields accelerate meaningfully, and the biggest open questions are less, how smart will AI get? And more, who controls the compute, energy, and capital it takes to get there?
Mm-hmm.
And how are the resulting gains distributed? There's your political conversation.
It is 100%. That's right there.
But there's I remember the EasyJet. EasyJet's a European. It was an airline in Europe back 20, 30 years ago. The guy built it, became a multimillionaire. And in any case, he said, look, once you surpass $10 million in net worth, everything else is bragging rights. So again, what Elon is predicting is there's so many good, you won't be able to imagine a new good service that you want. That the compute capacity is so efficient, everything you want is there for you, for everyone.
Right.
Again, the big question is how do we get from here to there? And ultimately, and that's the question none of the futurists answer. And I think what the consensus again is we're going to go through 5 to 10 years of significant disruption. So what we wanted to do, and we're finalizing today in the first set of shows, is that look, this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming. The technology tsunami is coming, and those that prepare for it, those that learn to surf the tsunami, are going to succeed and flourish. And those that don't get overwhelmed. Which is, I'm going to ask you to set up the next video then, Brian, because in these 3 minutes, it really is a summary of the challenge. Because Peter Diamandis, again, the godfather of abundance, basically talks about the difference between linear and exponential thinking. He has some great graphs in there. And basically, he says for the last 100,000 years since we left the savannas of Africa, we basically, are moving from a local and linear world to a world of global exponential technological change. And this is everything. My whole life goal is to help us prepare for a rapidly globalizing world of exponential technological change. So let's go see what he has to say.
Let's do that.
And graphs, and watch the gaps. The graph, one gap is going to be stress and opportunity. Let's turn the stress into opportunity. And the second is the educational challenge. And we're trying to fill both gaps right now with this show, Brian.
That's right.
Here we
go. All right, let's watch it.
Good morning, everybody.
Okay.
Great. It's a pleasure to be here. So I want to talk to you about what I'm passionate about, which is the extraordinary world that we're creating. So I want to give you my perspective. I have 2 4.5-year-old twin fraternal boys. And so I am so thinking about the education that they're going to be inheriting. But the fact of the matter is that the world is changing at an extraordinary rate, a rate like never before. And my goal here is to give you an actual sort of visceral feeling for that rate of change. Because it's ultimately your responsibility to re-engineer the educational system, not over the next 30 years, or 20 years, or 10 years. This next 5 years is going to see the world change more than you can possibly imagine. And it ultimately is going to be charter schools that have the ability and the flexibility to reinvent the curriculum that's going to sort of make it relevant for my kids, for your kids, and for the kids that we have that we're teaching. So here's the first point. We evolved as humans back hundreds of thousands and millions of years ago, back when a world was local and linear. Everything that affected you back then on the savannas of Africa was within a day's walk. The world didn't change millennium to millennium or century to century. Nothing changed. The life of your great-grandparents, you, your kids, their kids was the same. But today, the world is anything but that, right? Today, the world is global and exponential. Something happens in China or India, you know about it seconds later. Computers know about it microseconds later. Things aren't changing century to century or decade to decade. They are changing year to year. And if I were to graph that, it looks like this. That red line is all of us. It's our teachers, our students, our friends, our board members, our politicians. We haven't had a hardware or software upgrade in 50 million years. It's been a while, right? That yellow line is the technology that we're creating. artificial intelligence, robotics, synthetic biology, computers, networks, sensors, 3D printers, all of these technologies are doubling in power year to year to year. And the difference between these two lines, between us sort of linear thinking humans not really changing in our biology very much, and this growing technology, is either disruptive stress or disruptive opportunity. And another way that I look at it is the following. Historically, the earliest schools didn't have to change the curriculum that much, right? Because the curriculum over 50 years, 100 years was pretty much basic. Math and reading and writing and so forth. But today, as the technology is growing at such a rapid rate, our responsibility to constantly reinvent and be on the cutting edge for relevance for our students is higher than ever before. Good morning.
After watching that, I think that the visual that he did on that, Joe, was just perfect. To where you see the linear line, and even over hundreds of thousands of years, it's just kind of going just like this. And then what we're seeing compacted, and we've talked about this too, is over the last 50, 100 years, but especially in the last 10 or 20, we're seeing an exponential rate of change. And I just want to say one more thing about it. He hits the nail on the head, because we can't educate our kids the way that our parents were educated or that we were educated, because so much of that is now obsolete. And I'll give you a little bitty example. And it's a little bitty one, and people may disagree with it. I learned how to write cursive in school. It was part of the practice. You had to do the little perfect lines and this, that, and the other. So the school districts that my kids went to, when they were in school, they replaced that with typing. They don't write cursive. They don't know how to write cursive. Now, that's just one little bitty example, but it is an example of things and how things are changing very quickly, right?
Well, it's an example of how things are changing, but they're not changing very quickly, in the sense that so I have more technology in this phone than the rocket ship went to the moon. That's what we've been talking about in
That's
today's
right.
show. And so and there's not a so what are we seeing here? We're seeing dramatic fundamental change over the next 5 to 10 years. We need to prepare our students, our K-12 students, for that level of change. I can
Yep.
tell you, we work with school on One World Future Ready. We work with school districts around the globe. 1 out of 100 is even thinking about this. It's crazy, and everybody's talking AI, but they're not really talking about the societal impact. And so there's a huge education challenge. In fact, I'm on this. If you watch the whole video, which I highly recommend, he says this is all going to change in 5 years. Well, it hasn't. That video's 10 years old, and everybody's still looking for the educational secret sauce. Now, we're trying to provide it in One World Future Ready, to prepare children for the K-12 students for the unprecedented opportunities and challenges of our 20. As Vinod Khosla, the VC capitalist, says, 5-year-olds are never going to have to look for a job. So we need to help them create their passion. That's the real educational challenge. How do we live and define ourselves in a post-scarcity world? If work is no longer your reason for being, what will become your reason for being? Is it going to be the gladiators of Rome, or are we all going to become Shakespeare? That's the real challenge. Once we navigate the next 10 years, that's the thing. But the challenge is to navigate the next 10 years, and he says very clearly, stress and opportunity. Now, this is if you might invite me on your political show, I'd love to come on and talk about coherent conversations, because we'll talk about this in upcoming episodes, but we're not having a coherent conversation on AI. Again, that's the rationale for this show. You don't boo Eric Schmidt, who it's like booing Al Gore because of climate change. Al Gore, whatever you think of him, is working very hard to provide climate solutions. The second thing, coherent conversations. The way the world has evolved now, if you remember from our 5 layer cake, your number one competitive advantage is electricity generation.
Yeah.
So you told me that Kathy Hochul said no more data centers in New York. Well, why is she doing that? I would argue the reason they do that, she's doing that is because they closed the nuclear facility in our area, and we're already facing an energy deficit in New York. So you could argue it's rational, but it's rational because you refuse to use nuclear.
Yeah.
It's rational because you haven't focused on energy. It's rational because you won't allow fossil fuels. So look, I haven't seen a whole lot of people give up their cars,
Mm-hmm.
up their electricity, give up heating and AC. So energy is at the core function of everything, every societal civilizational advancement. So we need to really focus on energy and not prohibit data centers. Figure out how you're going to increase your electricity
That's
supply.
right. That's right.
And last, I'll just say Great Britain. And again, I'm apolitical. This show is apolitical, so I'm unafraid to say that Boris Johnson, the Conservative Prime Minister for UK, destroyed the nation
Mm.
because he put in place crazy green policies, or exaggerated green. I'm all about clean energy, all about moving forward with the environment. But you can't have exaggerated policies that increase your electricity costs 30 to 40%. They will not be able to compete. All my British friends, hopefully we'll win today at 3 o'clock. All my British and the World Cup, all my British friends tell me that the economy is screwed. And what I can tell you fundamentally, if your electricity costs are 30 to 40% higher, you will not be able to compete in today's economy.
Yeah.
So that's the stress, and the opportunity is understanding, generating a coherent conversation to use these technologies in a way that advances your community and your society. And that can take place at the local level. I'm trying to create Communities 2050. I'm trying to get my school district, municipality, chamber of commerce, and not-for-profits come together with a vision for Portchester. I'll tell you how I get on with that.
Well, I can't wait to hear about that one. And so I don't think I've ever told you this, Joe. Our good friend of ours, Bill O'Reilly, and I and quite a few other people started up a 501c3, which is still running, a nonprofit. And what's one thing that we're known for? Conservatives in climate change and trying to address it. And I'm bringing this up because it's going to circle back to exactly what we're talking about. And our argument has been consistently that we're not prepared for what we need for tomorrow's energy. We're just trying to catch up with where we should be today. And that Kathy Hochul stuff. So for those that don't know, the New York governor put a moratorium on building data centers. And it's absolutely asininely stupid because they're still going to get built. They're just not going to get built right there. It's a failure. It's a political failure to not being able to address the energy needs of her state and the country. And so, again, this is not a political statement. I'm not taking
I
a
have time
political
for a
shot.
30-second intervention to
Yes.
anticipate. 30 seconds. Again, coherent conversations. People on Fox News rail about socialism, but I would advocate today for national health care. I talked about an entrepreneurship
Mm-hmm.
economy. But we in the United States, we do have national health care for the elderly
Yep.
and the poor, Medicare, Medicaid. So these conversations are incoherent. The incremental cost to go national health care, I think, would not be that substantial. I'd love to do the numbers. And this is the challenge. The real challenge is disrupting the medical profession. The real challenge is disrupting the existing interests. And this will be the challenge. These are the challenges, Brian, that we're going to face in the very near
That's
term.
right.
Political fights in a very divided nation. And what we'll be talking about coming, that's our situational awareness. This ChatGPT moment was thrust on a divided nation and a divided world. And if we can't come together in the United States, and if we can't come together globally, we risk ultimately the Fermi paradox. We risk ultimately using this technology to destroy humanity rather than advance it.
I can't agree more. And it's why, I guess, in some ways, and I know we've got to close down here, but we're an apolitical show, and I want to keep it apolitical. And I know you do too, but at the end of the day, politics are real, and politics will have a major play in what happens with AI. And again, this is not a Democrat or Republican or anything like that conversation. It is that we have to do better as a country and a world if we're going to be able to address these issues. So, another great episode, Joe. Everyone, just so you know, we will be doing another episode on Monday. We will not be doing one on Wednesday. Joe's going to be traveling and drinking margaritas down on a beach somewhere. He said he didn't want to call in, but that's okay, you know.
Actually, I'll be in Rondonia, Brazil. I'll be in Rondonia, Brazil, in the Amazon.
Yeah, still sitting there on the beach drinking Mai Tais or something. Everyone, if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, like it, follow our channel, leave a question for me and Joe. We really will. We'll read it out on air. We'll talk about it. And I think it's important, especially right now, that we do start asking questions. If you're watching this on TikTok or Twitch or any of the other social media stuff or organizations, do the same thing. Leave a question, give us a follow, let us know what you think. Obviously, we're expanding and doing what we're doing. Remember that scale that we just saw, Joe? That, you know, where the knee of the curve is? That's where we're at right now as an organization. We're at the knee of the curve, baby. So give us a like, give us a follow, ask Joe a question, and we'll do it on air. So another great episode, my friend. I will see you again on Monday.
Right.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us. It's a lot of fun.
You've been watching Joe Carvin's Hinge of History. The No Bull Media Group is available on all major social media platforms. Make sure to give us a follow where you can watch this show and many others.
A No Bull Media Group member.